Hello and welcome to another episode of the Autistic Tidbits and Tangents podcast. I'm Maja Toudal, an autistic psychologist, and this is Kara Dymond.
Kara Dymond. I'm an autistic teacher and university instructor.
And today we're doing something really fun and lighthearted, or so we think anyway.
Hopefully.
Which is I or others should have known that I was autistic when...
Mm-hmm.
And
when indeed.
It's basically just going to be us sharing some stories about our lives, things we used to do, stories that happened.
Reminiscing.
Just going through, experiences of what it's like to grow up as an autistic person and things like when you look back on it, you're like, oh yeah, that was pretty autistic.
That was that. Yeah.
I did that. So that's going to be today. Welcome to Autistic Tidbits and Tangents.
Candid conversations between autistic off-hour professionals.
Cool. Potential trigger warnings for this episode include, but may not be entirely limited to, discussions of ableism, as always, discussions of privilege, brief mentions of things like sexuality or unconventional interests like serial killers, as well as references to the author who shall not be named.
So let's jump right in. Okay. They should have known I was autistic when I asked questions that people thought were either rude or just didn't understand my thought process at all. So I'll give you an example. I was raised in a Catholic household, was in the Catholic public school system here in Canada. And in grade 2, so I think you're about 8 years old in grade 2, you do your first communion. When we were preparing for first communion, I asked the priest, why did they have to nail Jesus to the cross when they could have just hung him? And of course, I got shocked reactions. I don't even think they answered the question. But in my defense, I had spent, I don't even know how many times I had watched Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves on repeat. So I knew that hanging was a faster, less painful death. That would have saved Jesus hours of agony on the cross. And I knew he had to die. He had to die for the prophecy aspect, right? So it was a logical... compassionate question, but was not accepted as such.
Oh no. Oh gosh. Yeah, for me it was like answering questions from a completely different framework, especially in school. This actually ended up being a memory that has haunted me for most of my life, and I've ruminated for so many hours about this. And it's such a stupid thing. So this is going to be in is it grade 0 or grade 1? I don't even know. Oh, the dog is scratching at the door.
But you were very little.
I was very, very little. And it was a class quiz. And the question from the teacher, I was on a team with another classmate, and we had to answer this question. And it was as fast as you can answer, right?
Oh, no.
And the question was, what's a person called that flies a plane? And I couldn't remember the word pilot. I just could not remember. And I used to watch, and I don't know what these are called in English, so I'll just explain what it is. But I used to watch cartoons from Disney or whatever. So I used to watch these cartoons, and there was a pilot called Baloo.
Oh yes, I remember. I used to watch that show.
Yeah. So I ended up, because the other kid couldn't remember either, apparently. And I ended up just going, Baloo. And it was for me, it made perfect sense. he's a person that flies a plane.
And you didn't have processing time?
No, I didn't. And so it was just, yeah. I thought I answered the question, but apparently I didn't.
And tests and quizzes are like that, eh? Like my experience has always been, multiple choice or true or false. And it's like, no, there's more than one way to interpret this question. So I have to now write a sentence to explain my true or false selection. Yeah. And I can't do Likert scales. There's another sign because I want to be precise with everything.
Yeah, it's impossible. Yeah. It's absolutely impossible. Okay, so they should have known that I was autistic when, as a child, and I still do this actually, but from a very, very small, from when I was a very small child, I used to hyper focus on other worlds or fiction.
Ooh, I loved imaginative fiction. Like, deep dives into worlds.
So for me, it was the anime Silverfang and Robin Hood.
Nice.
And then from then on, it became like Harry Potter, and then other like of course it escalates because it always does, right? But like, oh my God, the amount of times that I have rewatched Silverfang or Robin Hood movies.
Yeah.
Over and over and over
right?
and over. And it's not that there's anything new. Like, of course, I process it differently now that I'm an adult, but just
I agree.
over and over.
I used to watch the BBC Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Really old, outdated movie. Even then it was outdated, I'm pretty sure. But I watched it every time I was homesick. I loved it. And Anne of Green Gables, like you name it. Like it was something like that where, and then I went through a phase of just like 1940s films, like old, vintage movies. Loved the outfits, everything.
Would you then, as a child, would you play pretend in those worlds that you were hyperfixating on?
I don't really remember doing a lot of I remember some forms of pretend play. I do remember having a dollhouse that my grandfather built, and sometimes like having to play Barbies with a friend, but I wasn't into it. Like I didn't love that kind of thing.
Or mimicking it in a certain sense.
So like when I did imaginative things, it tended to be by myself. So I would often, here's another way you could tell. I would often think about the feelings of objects or my dolls, or like even to this day, when you and I were deciding what Zoom code to use. And I was like, we should use the one that I sent because it might be lonely. Like, I have these thoughts like, what if it has like sentience, and I would spend hours and hours outside, like in the woods, and I would imagine like fairyland and things like that. So solitary imaginative play more than with other people made it difficult. Like I had a friend who was really bossy and wanted things her way all the time. And it was just like, this isn't fun.
No, I used to do a lot of solitary imaginative play as well, but it would be like trying to recreate scenes from the movies or.
Oh, I would practice in the mirror. I would be like, I would imitate Mae West or whoever it was. And yeah.
No, I used to, one thing that I did that really pissed off my mom was that when I had my Robin Hood phase, I made my own bow and arrow.
I love it.
And I wasn't allowed to shoot it outside. So then my brain goes, well, then I'm allowed to shoot it inside.
Literal interpretations. I love it.
So I would lie in my bed and shoot arrows into the ceiling. and when we were moving from that house, there was just holes in the ceiling all over the place.
Oh, I love it.
It was bad. It was.
You and I would have been good friends. I mean, we're good friends now, but if we'd met in childhood, because I loved Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, we would have really gotten along.
I was a bad child. I was awful. Actually, it kind of brings me to another, like they should have known I was autistic. Mm-hmm. So I kind of want to put this under a framework called hyperindependence.
Okay. Yeah.
So even as like a 7, 8, 9-year-old child, I was fine being home alone. Like if my mom was coming home, I would be like, oh, I didn't need you to do that.
Yeah.
Like I was fine being alone. And
Yeah.
we had like 4 or 5 dogs at that time. And I could handle that shit. I could just, sorry, swearing. But like I could handle the house by myself perfectly fine. I would make sure that the dogs were walked and fed and that everyone, it's fine. You don't need to come home. I got this, Mom.
That just reminded me of one too. So I think I was very fortunate. My parents were able to afford lots of different like activities and things for me. And for a little while, I was doing horseback riding. I stopped not because I didn't want to do it, but because the instructor kept leaving, and like I could see her on her phone in her office, and I just felt like it was unsafe not to be supervised, but I didn't want to tell my parents. I didn't want her to get in trouble. So I said I didn't want to do it anymore. But here's the part I wanted to tell you. I was like, instead, I'm going to use that hour on Saturday mornings for some reflection time. I'm going to read this book on, saints, and I'm going to read this book. It's going to be personal reflection time. Right.
Oh,
and it's like,
God.
I wanted the alone time. But that's sort of two things, is that I've always been a solitary problem solver. Like I have not always, I don't want to distress anybody else. So I never wanted to bring my parents into, like, if I was being bullied, I didn't tell them,
Same.
And then I really valued alone time. Like I love to be like, can I just use that morning as like a set block to read and be in my own little world, a little reading nook in my room, Did
you do stuff though that would like get a normal child into trouble? Because I remember one time I had baked a cake, like fairly intricate, difficult cake to make. And I was, again, 7, 8 years old. And my mother wasn't home. So I had been using the oven by myself. And she came home, and I do not know what this cake is called in English. I don't think there's an equivalent. It's a very Danish thing. But she comes home, and I've made like this huge cake perfectly. And she doesn't know whether to get mad at me or not, because
or be impressed.
But also like if she gets mad at me, then it's more interesting for me to use the oven when I'm by myself. But I used to do things like that. Also, I built a teepee in the backyard. Like I actually went and stole logs, like small trees that were already chopped up. There was a small, I mean, it's not a forest because it was tiny, but there was this area. But like directly, if you went out at the very back of our yard, you would go straight into that area. And there would be this pile of small trees that had been already chopped down, and all the branches were already off. So they were just, perfect logs sitting there. And I didn't realize that I was stealing from somebody. I did not like. I was just like, they're trees. They're just trees. How can I be stealing trees, right?
Yeah.
So I stole 12 of them and like properly made a teepee. Like I had seen how to do it.
Yeah.
So like tying 3 together and then raising them up and putting the logs all on there and then tying it all together. And like, and I did all of that. And again, I was home alone when I did it. I could have gotten hurt. Like things could have gotten really bad. But I used to do stuff like that as a child and I would be alone because I didn't have any friends.
I didn't get into trouble much. I was very afraid of getting into trouble. I used to feel guilty when, when teachers do the thing in class where they're like, all right, who did this? We all might have to stay in, I always was like, oh no, I feel so guilty, even though it was never me. And I was like, they're going to know that I feel guilty and I'm going to look guilty. Like it was like an existential crisis every time. but I did like to get little twigs and things and build little log cabins at recess sometimes.
Oh
See,
my
we would have been kindred spirits.
We would have totally been. Oh my God.
Now, what about like dislikes? So I really hated, I don't know if you know this cartoon. It was called Inspector Gadget.
Yeah.
And Inspector Gadget, as you know, he's a little bit of a buffoon. He never actually solves the case or whatever the problem is. It's always his niece, Penny, and the dog Brain. I think Brain might be the dog's name. And to me, the injustice of him always getting the credit, like I was like, this is just maddening. Yeah. Like it frustrated me to no end.
I think for me, the things I watched as a child, we didn't have TV really until I was close to 10.
Hence the bow and arrow.
Well, I mean, we had a VCR, right. And then whatever VHS tapes I could get my hands on was kind of what I would watch over and over. And then we had 2 channels that were both like the national channels that we have in Denmark. And it's mostly really boring stuff.
Yeah.
So obviously I would try to watch cartoons when they were there, but we really only had a 1-hour Disney show once a week. That was pretty much it. But in terms of like entertainment, things that I dislike, I need there to be a good character whose side I can be on.
Someone to root for. Mm-hmm.
It's not that I understand that the world isn't black and white, and I am interested in characters that aren't entirely good, or where things progress or people change and like all of that. Great. But I hate shows where I don't know who to root for. And then when the people I root for turn out to be cruel or evil in some way, and it switches off for me. I can't. Like, I'll give you an example.
Sure.
I loved Blacklist.
Okay.
Until I couldn't root for Reddington being basically kind of a good guy.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense to me.
And like, I'm fine with him having been this big time criminal and he's done all of these horrible things and such. But if there's a good reason for him to have done it, then I'm fine. Mm-hmm. But if I can't hold on to that, I just lose it. I lose all interest in it. It's like, no, I can't make it go away.
Yeah.
And I kind of felt like that through Game of Thrones as well, which otherwise I thought was a really good show, but like,
there's a lot of moral ambiguity.
There's a lot of that. And I'm fine with it if there's one person I can root for.
Tyrion, obviously.
For me, it was Arya for as long as
I loved her too. Oh.
Yeah. Honestly, though, the thing that got me through that show was the dragons, because dragons should exist.
That Game of Thrones, I think, was when I realized, was it Game of Thrones subtitles really work for my brain because I had so much trouble following for the first few episodes. Because there's so many, even though I'd read the books, right? It's just, I can't always match faces to names. And then they're suddenly like, their clothes are different or they have scruff and they didn't before. And I'm like, I don't know who that is. Do we know this person? You know? Yeah. There you go. The other
face
signs I should have known. Yeah.
Oh, I have that problem as well. Oh my God. I do not remember names or faces. Like, I have to know people or have met them in a very intense setting to be able to remember them.
I have to actively try to memorize their face, or like it's got to be completely stress-free. But normally when I'm being introduced to someone, it's like there's this adrenaline or something that kicks in and I don't remember either their name or their face.
Private parties are the worst. Where you're like being introduced to 5 or 6 new people and you're like, Yeah. I remember one of my birthdays at one point, and I was a full grown adult at this point.
Yeah.
Two guests, two young men were both bringing their new girlfriends that I had never met before.
Oh no.
And I think they were like both brunettes, and they were both kind of short.
Yeah. Yeah.
And other than that, they were completely different. Like, other than that, I should have been able to tell them apart, but I couldn't. I kept like mixing them up because like, I was at my own party. I know everybody else here except for those two people, but I'm kind of tipsy and you both have the same kind of hair. And I can't.
Yeah, no, I have to like,
it's so embarrassing.
It is embarrassing. I have to like either have talked for a while and like deliberately memorized features. I once I worked one shift in a coat check at a very busy art gallery. And during that shift, I was like, I don't remember who gave me this tag. And now I have, or who gave me the coat. Now I have to give them the tag, but you go and hang up the coat to get the tag. And it's like, so I had to start being like, okay, you kind of look like a less attractive celebrity. Like I would try to be like, which celebrity do you remind me of? And I would have to play games or pay attention to a specific feature. Like, oh, you have really bushy eyebrows, whatever it was, to be able to remember who it was.
Oh, you're wearing a weird necklace.
Yeah.
Okay.
Find one feature that I can focus on.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, something else that I think was odd, maybe about me, where like either I should have known that I was like firmly different, or others should have picked up on something. Was that when I was a teen, I developed a special interest in serial killers.
I also have that interest.
And monsters. And it's weird because I meet so many autistic people that are interested in either serial killers or wars or some kind of monster. And for me, it's always been mostly vampires and serial killers. And of course, those two overlap.
Yes,
in
they would.
Two very famous cases. And so I would sit at school, I kid you not, at school and read about these things
your book of
while everybody else was like either talking about like a new computer game or a party that they had been to, or boy bands. Well, I liked boy bands as well, but like I just also had this, you know?
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
I was like Backstreet Boys and Vlad Tepes. Who
was your favorite Backstreet Boy?
You know, that's actually difficult. It is. Okay, I have a problem choosing a bias when it comes to music artists.
Okay.
And I think it's because I dance a little bit. I'm completely an amateur in everything. So everything I'm about to mention is like, yeah, I do it, but it's don't even mention it. But like, I like dancing, I like singing, I like writing music, I like, you know, all of these different things, right? So Nick was my favorite in terms of his look. Brian had my favorite voice overall, but then AJ was like, he had more of a personality to his voice.
AJ was mine. If I had to pick, I wasn't that big into it.
Those three were my favorites.
Yeah.
But like, and I'm the same now. Like, I'm hugely into K-pop, and I have been since like 2008. And everyone is like, "Who's your bias? Who's your bias?" And I'm like, but like, don't make me choose, though.
Making choices is so tough. Actually, here's another. How could anyone miss that I was autistic? I love music. I love music of all genres. My parents had very eclectic musical tastes. And when I was like, 12 or 13, that's when I sort of had the freedom to start buying CDs. And I did for a little while, but then I was like, I stopped altogether because there was just too many things I wanted to buy. And I was like, I will never be able to complete my collection or I will go broke. So I'm just not going to buy any CDs. anymore. And so I stopped. I stopped because I was overwhelmed by the choice.
Oh, no. Well, I think I'm lucky with that because I do tend to like zoom in on specific artists that I really like.
Yeah.
So I have another thing though, like I cannot let go of my music library. So I still have all of my CDs from my whole life. I will not throw any of them out.
Me too.
I also have my entire iTunes library of music, which is like, it's over 20 gigabytes.
Wow.
And that's not even a lot though.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot, but it's not a lot.
Yeah.
But people keep saying like, why don't you use Spotify? Why don't you use Spotify? And I'm like, yeah, but then I have to pay for a subscription to have access to the music that I already bought.
I wish there was a way to like, to digitize everything that like CDs, DVDs, all these things. I have cassette tapes from childhood. I don't even have a cassette tape player anymore.
I know.
I wish I did.
It's so hard to let go of like the thing that you used to listen to over and over again.
Yeah.
Because like there's nostalgia attached to it, but there's also like usually it's very little of the music that I used to listen to that I now think is bad.
Yeah.
Most of it is like, no, there was something good about it. It might be outdated in terms of the style or the genre.
But it did something.
Well,
for
not the
you.
genre, but like the production is outdated. Okay, fine. Yeah. But there was still something good about it. Even the, crappy 90s pop.
Yep.
The songs that I used to like are still good for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Like they still have something.
You stand by your taste.
I don't know. I'm a music nerd. I if I could, I would listen to music all day, every day, and I would do nothing else, and I would never get anything done.
Okay. Another thing that happened to me a lot was I would have trouble pronouncing words because I read so voraciously, and you always come across words that you've never heard anyone use.
Yeah.
And then so I would mispronounce things, and either people would laugh or, or it would take me a long time to be like, that's that word, and make that connection, what?
Yeah.
In my brain, it sounds like this.
I know that I've done that with a few words, but I can't remember what they were. I think for me, it was mostly that people wouldn't correct my pronunciation of English words until I was much too old. Like
it's pronunciation.
Pronunciation. Yeah. I remember that I used to pronounce the word choir with the same CH as chair. So it became choir.
That makes sense. Oh my goodness.
And nobody would correct that.
Yeah.
Which annoyed the hell out of me when I found out.
Yeah.
No. Okay. So related to this, but obviously completely tangential. So for me with language, there is a huge sensory component.
Well, and you're also you are amazing at picking up dialects and sort of switching how you pronounce things based on where you are in the world. Like you have a really good auditory, system or something.
I don't know if I agree with that. I have like 2 accents that I can do very well.
Okay.
Then I have a couple of local-ish dialects that I can do semi well. But you should hear my husband though. He will switch, and it's specifically with English dialects that he can do it. Yeah. And I do not understand, like, how can you do so many? And like, nobody ever taught him, right?
Yeah.
No, I'll do it with Oxbridge English. Then I have like my plain kind of whatever American, Canadian, whatever
North American,
this is.
general.
Yeah. And then I can sort of do a California.
Yeah.
But it mostly becomes very satirical.
Okay.
Sorry. And it's kind of the same thing with the Southern accent. It's like I can do it, but it does become kind of satirical when I do it.
Exaggerated.
And I'm only really able to do it if I'm talking about Jesus.
I should have had you tell my story earlier.
No. Okay, so the sensory thing about language, right, is for me, Danish is far too much like German in the sound of it and the feeling of pronouncing things in Danish. It's you're far too much at the back of your throat. You kind of feel tense speaking Danish. Well, I don't know if other people notice, but I notice. And English is a much softer sound. So as a small child, I already started to choose that I would rather watch a series or a movie in English if I could. I would much rather have it in English with subtitles than I would have it dubbed into Danish.
Interesting.
And so as soon as I became able to choose, I would start like having Disney movies in English. So obviously the ones that I saw when I was younger than that, I remember them in Danish and I kind of prefer them in Danish because I was introduced to them in Danish. But as soon as we're like onto stuff that I saw at a little bit of a later age, then it's like, it has to be in English. I can't, I don't want to listen to Danish if I can avoid it. And it's so weird, but I hear it from so many others. Yeah. And this is with my clients as well. Like the parents are like, is this book available in Danish? How do we find this information in Danish? And the kids are like, no, I prefer English. And it's like everyone. And obviously you won't have had this issue. No, I guess. But there is French though in Canada.
But my French is like subpar at best. Un petit peu of French. But subtitles, so something I can relate to. Although it's not a sensory thing, I think it's more of like going to like justice and justice fairness thing. I dislike watching dubbed shows. I prefer the original language, whatever it is, and subtitles because I want to honor those actors' work. I want to hear their intonation. I want to, even though I don't understand necessarily what they're saying without reading it. Although it's weird because I often feel like I've heard it. Like, I don't know, somehow between reading and hearing the tone, I feel like I've heard the words. But I don't like when it's dubbed, and I don't like the mismatch, even though they do a very good job of matching these days.
They do a really good job. And I do think, a lot of credit to voice actors.
Yes, no disrespect to voice actors, because you do an amazing job. I just prefer the original language with it, and I worry about missing things when they make the sounds match rather than they are also trying to match the meaning, but so I'm a purist.
Yeah, but it's still difficult though. Like there's still that sense of like something here is not entirely on point.
It's like the uncanny valley a little bit.
Yeah. Like the voice doesn't entirely match with the person somehow, there's weird things like that. Yeah. But the thing is, I get that in cartoons.
Yeah.
So
that's true. Good point.
If there's the slightest mismatch, and they're really good at casting these days, but sometimes if you're watching a dubbed cartoon, something is off. Like it's not right.
Yeah.
Somehow. And it is an issue. It's totally an issue.
Yeah. Now, what about you as a kid? Like, were you hyper empathetic? Did you struggle with empathy for others? Like, do you have any memories about that?
I think I just wanted to be alone all the time. Like I had at most 2 or 3 friends up until I was probably 17, 18. So for my entire childhood, I had one or two, maybe three friends, and that was it. Like, other than that, leave me alone. I want to be alone. I want to be in my room. Even like when I was really young, before I developed certain phobias that had kept me out of nature, I used to climb trees a lot and stuff, but it would be alone. Yeah. It would always be alone. And that's probably the thing where, like, how did nobody see? How? Yeah. Did nobody see that this kid was weird? Mm-hmm. Because I did not want to be around other kids. I did not want to be around other adults. Mm-hmm. Like, just alone. Yeah. Alone. Yeah. And I had such, like, I think I was 10 maybe when I asked to have a lock on my door. Mm-hmm. My door didn't close properly, so it had to be a hook. Yeah. Like a little metal hook to close the door properly. But like, I wanted to be able to lock my door from the inside. Yeah. Because I wanted to know for space. Yeah. I wanted to know for sure when I was going to be disturbed. Mm-hmm. And like, I think that's been the bigger thing for me, that like, I don't remember hyper empathy. I don't remember struggling with social things. Obviously I did. Yeah. Yeah. But I don't remember it. Yeah. I just remember, like, I'm fine with having, you know, these few friends, but like, other than that, just leave me alone.
I love it. I
was so young too. Like, it's that age where you expect kids to be like, come on, let's do something together. Yeah. Let's go explore something. And I was just like, nope. Just give me my Silver Fang movie
and I'm happy.
Get out. Yeah.
No,
what about you?
I can think of both. Like, I think in general, I'm more hyper empathetic than not. It can be a bit of a problem. Like, I really feel things. Like, I can't watch medical shows because I feel pain, even when it's fictitious. And I only was able to get through Grey's Anatomy because I used a weighted blanket, and that calmed my nervous system down a little bit. But gosh, as a child, I remember, sorry, mom and dad. I remember discovering when I was quite young, like 4 or 5, that Santa Claus was not real, because my parents did this wonderful job of, like, there was a magic footprint in glitter of Santa by the fireplace. Really? But I checked my dad's boot, and sure enough, there was glitter on the bottom. And so I knew, and I remember my heart falling and being crestfallen and being like, I don't want to take away the joy of Christmas for my parents, so I'm going to play along. So I played along for a long time. Yeah. Because I was like,
so funny.
They are going to this length to make this special for everyone. Like, I better pretend that I believe Santa is real. Like, and that was to protect their feelings. But then I remember when I was a little bit older, I was like 11 maybe. And I had a friend who hated spicy food, and I could not wrap my head around it because I'm great with spice. Yeah. And I tricked her into eating like a pickled jalapeno pepper. And then I discovered, no, people do have different spice tolerances. Oops. Like, so it was hit or miss, but I would say more on the hyper empathy, and I still feel guilty. I am sorry, Megan, for the jalapeno trick.
Okay. That's another thing where, like, that's a very autistic trait, is to like ruminate over social mistakes or things you have done that you then realized were wrong. And it just never stops. Like, I had to learn to meditate myself to sleep as a teen. Yeah. And I'm so sad that I didn't discover it until then, but like, I kind of invented my own way of doing it. Yeah. I didn't even know that meditation was a thing. Like, I'm very uncultured. But like, I had to find a way to meditate myself asleep, because otherwise I would spend hours ruminating on old experiences and memories and things I had done wrong, or things where other people had misunderstood me, and it would just be never ending.
Oh yeah.
And I could like ruminate myself into a full-on anxiety attack or like suicidal ideation.
Yeah. I'm playing all of my embarrassing moments in my head right now. Like,
and it's like, why does this movie not stop?
Right? And we have such long memories, like like neurotypicals don't remember anything. I know, logically speaking, no one else remembers in grade 2 when I got up to read my autobiography, which was entitled precociously, The Success of My Life. And I was like, the sex of my life. And I got ushered off the stage. No one else remembers this but me. And I am still mortified.
Oh gosh, that reminds me of something that okay. Here's social naivete for you and not knowing the social rules. So I have to preface this by saying that I'm going to talk about things related to sex now.
Trigger warning. We'll remember this.
Trigger warning. I don't know. So I'm a teenager. I know nothing about sex, but obviously because I'm a teenager, hormones, I've started thinking about it, and I am writing erotic fanfics without knowing that that's what I'm doing. But because I'm an autistic teen and I don't know how social things work, I'm doing it wherever I am and wherever I want, which included breaks at school.
Oh, so oh my gosh, so people can see what you're writing. And
well, I thought I kept it, to myself until somebody walked behind me, saw what I was writing, and decided to show it to the entire class.
Oh no.
Yeah. So I never did that again. And I certainly discovered that there are certain things that you should not do when other people can see what you're doing.
That makes me think of that autistically coded character in the show Sex Education. She does really like comics and stuff about like aliens having sex and things like that. It's a really good character.
That's fun.
Yeah.
No, but it's like, it's one of those things where like, I'm writing a story. It's clearly fiction, but because I'm a teenager and because the people who notice it are teenagers.
Yes. Oh, it's a big deal. Yeah.
Bad outcome.
Oh my gosh.
Although I'm not entirely sure how adults would have reacted either. Like, I'm not sure how the teachers would have handled it. So
not well.
That might have not gone down well either. I mean, I think I would have been 13 or 14 at the time. Mm-hmm. I think.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Probably too young for adults to expect.
And to appreciate, no matter how well written.
Yeah. And I also think there's this idea. I'm sorry, this is kind of like autism myths or like adult people myths. I think there's a stigma around children exploring their sexuality, and especially disabled children.
Yes.
So like autistic people having a sexuality, expressing it or exploring it is like, no. You're autistic. Go over there and either be the most like normal that you can be, or just don't do it at all. Like it's fine for us to be asexual, but it's not fine for us to like
be sexual or hypersexual.
Yeah. No.
And I went through the Catholic school system. So
in which you are not supposed to have a sexuality at all.
I remember seeing it twice, both in health class and in like, I don't know, biology in grade 9. They showed a video and it culminated in a live birth. So that was enough to be like, all right, not interested in this. Like people were like throwing up, like people were leaving the room. It was very good birth control, I think, for.
Wow. Okay. So my sex ed involved, I can't remember all of it, obviously, but one moment that I do remember was our sex ed teacher, who was also my least favorite teacher. He was very strict and he had a bad vibe for me. Okay. We're in 6th and 7th grade, and he brings styrofoam dildos, basically, and condoms. And we're like having to learn how to put on a condom onto this styrofoam thing. And first of all, I remember thinking, this is big. This does not go anywhere. But the other thing that I find so funny, and where this might be a little bit autistic, was all the others were like snickering and like,
and you have a genuine curiosity about how is this supposed to work?
And I'm like, okay, so we're putting this thing on that thing and we're doing it like that mechanically. Okay, done. What else?
Yeah.
Like I have questions, sure, but I didn't understand the embarrassment or the like, it's a styrofoam thing. It's not an actual penis.
Yes. Why are you guys making such a big deal about it? For sure. Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
What's going on, guys?
Yeah.
I did not understand anything.
And I had very little tolerance for, like students getting off track and like prolonging either boring subjects or like, just, I was like, I wanted to move at a fair clip. Like I wanted to, but
I think that's the giftedness though. Or
that's also true.
Like high cognitive function where you're like, I'm bored.
I was like, come on guys.
I'm bored.
Let's move on.
Yeah.
Come on, folks.
Well, I think we are on to the thing of the day.
Thing of the day. All right. I'm excited about this thing of the day. What is it, Maja?
It is Leanne Holiday Willie's book, Pretending to be Normal.
Ooh.
Which is one of the first autobiographical books on autism that I read. And first of all, I really like it because it's like one of the first autobiographical books written by a woman with kind of closer to my own profile. I had heard about Temple Grandin and things like that. And I appreciate all autistic advocates. I do. But I do not have Temple Grandin's profile.
We're all going to respond differently to different people because
exactly. So I was looking for like, who can I relate to? And of course there are differences where like when I was reading her book where I was thinking like, okay, that's not me at all. But it was also one of the first books where I really felt understood and like, okay, there are other people out there. And I think her book is really great for like talking about in general that balance between masking and like trying to get through life without being spotted.
Yes.
Not because you're not supposed to be autistic, because she's also very much about being your authentic self, but also, learning that you're supposed to get through life without people noticing you too much and like trying to walk that line and then discovering your autism. And like, I really appreciate her way of telling her story.
I will have to read it. I've never read it.
You have to. Yeah. And there's actually two versions. There's an original, which you'll usually find cheaper.
Yeah.
But there's also a newer version, which I don't have, and I've not read the newer version. But I was told that in the new version, she includes some topics that she didn't want her parents to know about while they were still alive. So she actually waited. And I don't know entirely if this is true. I have to admit it, but this is what I was told, that, she waited with publishing these particular parts of her story until she was sure that her parents wouldn't find out.
Wow.
And I think it includes some pretty bad experiences that she's had.
Yeah.
But I also think that's really interesting because like as autistic people, things happen to us and not everything that happens to us is good.
Yes.
And there is that aspect of like, how do you live life and how do you cope and how do you move on when you do encounter that, not all people are nice.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely relate to that. All right.
But it's a really, really good book. And it's,
I'll add it to my list. Fantastic.
Yeah, do. And for everyone in the audience, definitely find this book. It's probably in your local library if they have any sort of segment on autism. It's one of the absolute classics in terms of autobiographical works in autism. And it's great. Yeah.
All right. Random question of the day.
Okay.
And I have to admit, I said I was going to think of one in advance. And again, I have not. So I have one for you, though, based on some things we're talking about. If you could slip into the world of one of your favorite book series, which one would you choose and why?
Oh, no.
I'll give you some time to process and think about that because I know it's hard. And you don't have to like.
Does it have to be a book series or can it be a television series?
Fine, I'll allow it. Yeah, that's okay.
Well, I'm not a big reader is the thing.
Yes. Okay, we'll go TV.
Because
your favorite series, not favorite series, a
slowly.
series you'd like to slip into.
I don't know if I would like to slip into it so much as there are characters that I would like to have conversations with.
Ooh, cool. Which one?
There are too many.
You're like, there's too many scrolling through my brain.
Okay. Well, do you have an answer?
Again, it's hard for me to choose because there's a lot scrolling through my brain. But if I had to pick one right now off the top of my head, I really love Patrick Rothfuss's The King Killer's Chronicle. 2 out of the 3 books in the series are out. Get on it, Pat. But the world is just so vivid and there's elements of magic, and he's done such a great job of fleshing out different made up cultures and people. And when I read the first book in the series, it was after I'd done my PhD and I hadn't read any fiction in a couple of years. And I cried and I read it out loud to my cats a little bit. It was like, this is so beautiful, but it really had a profound effect on me. Because it was so vividly described and the characters leapt off the page. So I think that would be one I'd like to explore, but I can think of a million.
Very cool. Okay. So this answer is going to be a little bit weird. Maybe.
That is welcome. Welcome.
Boston Legal.
Ooh, why?
Because I want to be friends with Alan Shore. Like, it's such a fun, weird character.
Yeah.
But I would want to know that person in real life.
Yeah.
The conversations to be had with that character, I think that would be a friendship that would be very rewarding.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, other than that, I'm horrible. I'm a nerd. I'm the type of person that would want to spend a day in like Underworld. Or like
Skyrim. I want to be in Skyrim. And in fact,
for a day.
One time, and this was like me blending reality. One time I was driving and there was a low flying plane and I was like, dragon, because I'd been playing so much Skyrim. So, but I'd like to be in that world.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously, I mean, I think putting aside the author.
I know what you're going to say. Yeah.
You know what I'm going to say.
It was a great world.
Putting aside the author, I think a lot of autistic people have spent a lot of time and had a lot of joy in the world of Harry Potter.
Mm-hmm. I certainly did. Yeah.
And there are certainly wonderful, fantastical things in that world that I think it could be interesting to be there.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think, okay, and here's the thing that pops up in my head, right?
Yeah.
Whenever I think of worlds that I want to go into that are fictional, the problem that I have is that in fictional worlds, the stakes are always higher.
Mm-hmm.
So the threats are bigger.
Yes.
I would want to be in the world of Harry Potter, but then you have evil wizards, and evil wizards can do really, really horrible things.
That's terrifying.
And even though there are good wizards and witches that can do amazing, good things, the threats are bigger.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be more powerful, kind of, to feel safe in that world.
Mm-hmm.
Or that's where I go to. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's my anxiety, but that's just where I go to, which is why I pick a world like Boston Legal, where it's like, I could go there. That would be fine. Yeah. That would
no
be
immediate
fine.
risk to my personhood. Yeah.
You know what my other option was that I immediately left? Was Pride and Prejudice.
I went to something like that too, and then was like, no, I'd hate that as a woman. Like,
I would hate that as a woman, and also the lack of healthcare.
Lack of healthcare, and it would just be so boring all the time, right?
No, see, here's the thing. I think if you lead a world where you are away from technology, and I mean away from technology for a month, your brain won't miss it anymore.
Well, that's not really what I mean, because I do think I can see the sensory advantages of being back in those times. But if I'm going back as a woman in those times, there are, like, my day is not that exciting. It's gossip, which I don't really care for.
But at least we're white.
Really, I want to be a rich white man who has someone to take care of all my executive functioning needs and just allows me to imagine and think and enjoy and create. That would be okay.
See, the thing is, if I imagine like going back in time, the only thing I would want to be is powerful enough to make changes earlier.
And if I'm going back in time with the
consciousness I would wish for,
with the consciousness I have now, I think I would just find it so outrageous, and it would be so. It would be. It's already hard to cope in a society that is fundamentally unfair to so many people. But going back in time where that's even more pronounced,
and based off of different things, of course. But it's.
I would struggle.
Yeah. I mean, like. So we face injustices, and we face, I guess, like microaggressions and stuff, but
comparably fewer as
white,
university educated, like relatively very privileged, cis women. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
And I think going to a world that was back in time would be difficult.
Can I just say tangent, but also looping back to something you said? I just said comparably, and now I'm like, is it comparably or comparably? I don't know. I'm going to have to Google that later, and it's going to eat away at me. And you know
what? Today it's probably either. So a lot of pronunciations have become like where either is fine, or where either spelling is even fine. A thing that is happening, I think globally, but specifically in Denmark, we have a few sayings or a few words that have changed in meaning.
Yes.
In the last like 30, 40 years. And it bugs me. Like I feel old.
Yeah.
So we have a word in Danish, it's bjørnetjeneste, which directly translated is like a bear favor. So a bear favor. And it used to mean a bad favor. So it's like it might be meant in good faith, but it goes wrong. It has
it did not help you out at all.
Yeah, exactly. There's consequences of this favor that are not good. So, for example, that would be a parent making sure that nothing bad ever happened to their child. That would be a bare favor. But now it means a big favor. And I'm like, no.
And that's the opposite. Yeah.
It's completely, it's just swapped meanings, and my autistic brain cannot keep up.
Yeah, I understand.
Like, it meant this.
And how are people using it? And that's,
it's hard.
Yeah.
Anyway, though, we have to wrap up.
We do have to wrap up. This has been a delight, Maja. I really love this. This is my favorite episode so far.
The like weirdest, most unstructured thing that we've done so far. But
I loved every minute.
I do like when we're just having a conversation and just letting things happen. So audience, let us know what you think of this type of episode and what you think of the looser structure and the more, I don't know, whatever this was.
We could do this again. I have a million more stories. All right. Bye, everyone. Right. Take care.
Bye. Autistic Tidbits and Tangents.